Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, your home for Win Kevin Miller's Cash. More details available right now on KIDOTalkRadio.com. Joining us now, our great friend Mark Meckler from the Convention of States. And every time we have Mark on, we always get the phone lines a-buzzing, whether he's here with us or afterwards. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are you today?
Not bad. Good to have you on here in the Treasure Valley. So every time we have you on, your message resonates for quite some time. I have to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Now, are you being funded by George Soros?
I've never met Mr. Soros. We've never received funding from Mr. Soros. I think this is one of the funniest things I hear. By the way, the best tweet I've ever heard is that I'm funded by George Soros and the Koch brothers. An amazing, miraculous feat. The truth is we have over 80,000 small donors all around the country. My office is in my house. My wife is the development director that runs all the funding for the organization and raises all the money. She would laugh even more than I do about the idea of Soros funding.
So you're not funded by George Soros. You're not funded
Nope.
by the New World Order. You're not funded by a group that seeks to overthrow the government.
And like I said, I actually think in a way we're funded by a group that seeks to take back power from the federal government. This is just regular citizens all over the country that are sick and tired of Washington, D.C. telling us what to do. So those people, in a way, want to overthrow the government. They want to take the power away from the government and give it back to regular people. That's who we're funded by.
Now, here's a atypical Kevin Miller softball question for you. What's wrong with the government the way it is? I mean, look, we elect people. We have some great debates. We've spent $25 million to find out about Russian collusion delusion. Everything seems to be working.
Almost nothing is working. Here's what's fundamentally wrong. It's literally less about what we're doing, and even the things you describe, it's less about that and more about who makes the decisions about what we do. And the big frustration that most Americans have, over three-quarters of Americans say the federal government does too much and is involved in too many things, too deeply in our lives. And by the way, that's cross-partisan. So people are just sick and tired of decisions about their lives being made in Washington, D.C., primarily by bureaucrats who are unelected, unaccountable, don't know anything about them, and they live in D.C. because D.C. stands for doesn't care.
Well, you take a look at that, but let's just say, Mark, you have a convention of states. Is there any way to get the money out of politics? Because isn't that the root of all evil with what we're dealing with?
You know, I think it's funny, and I've had this debate with a lot of people. People who are friends of mine even think that money is the root of evil in politics. Let's just put this in context. It's really important. First of all, know that during the last presidential cycle, we, as a people, spent more money on potato chips than we did on the presidential election. Literally, more money on potato chips. I'm not talking all snack items. I'm talking potato chips. So we actually, relatively speaking, don't spend that much money on politics. But this is what's most important to know. When we do spend money on politics, there is a reason. The reason so much money gets spent on politics is because there's so much power in Washington, D.C. If the power wasn't there, it wouldn't be worth spending the money to influence it. So if you want to go at the taproot of the problem, which I do, you want to remove the power from Washington, D.C., so it's not so worth it for lobbyists to spend all that money in Washington, D.C.
Mark Meckler joining us, Convention of States, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. So your reaction to the Mueller report?
Well, look, it's pretty much what I expected, and I have to say, and I know I'm in the minority when I'm going to say this, Kevin, but I'm actually disgusted with people on both sides of the aisle. And here's why. It's so disingenuous. And I'm going to attack conservatives and Republicans first. I'm a conservative. But you heard all this stuff that, you know, Mueller was the very face of evil. He was Satan personified. No matter what, he was going to come up with something against the president. He was going to destroy the president. Everybody hated him. Here he comes out with a report, and everybody says, oh, you know, this is awesome. We should just listen to the guy. It's just disingenuous, all the political rhetoric. And on the flip side, on the left, you know, Mueller he was white as the driven snow. He was the most amazing man ever on earth. They made votive candles with his face on it, literally. And so they held him up as a saint. And now that he produces a report that doesn't have anything, and apparently he's not so great. And it's all Bill Barr's fault. So I'm sick of the coverage on both sides. The bottom line is we've come through this thing. It's clear that there was no collusion. By the way, collusion's not even a crime. Doesn't matter anyway, but we hear there's no collusion. Now people are talking about obstruction of justice. They said the president wasn't, quote unquote, exonerated. By the way, a DA, a prosecutor, an investigator never, ever, never exonerates anybody. Their only job is to determine if there's enough evidence to convict somebody of a crime, and then that goes to a DA or a prosecutor to decide whether to prosecute. So the fact that the president wasn't, quote unquote, exonerated, well, yeah, he was. They didn't have evidence to convict him or to prosecute him for obstruction of justice. So I'm happy with the result. I think it's time we move on. I don't believe that the Democrats are capable of doing that, so I think it's going to be the Republicans' advantage at this point.
Well, we hope so, but there is a certain hypocrisy when we talk about the media, far from what the Founding Fathers envisioned when they talked about a free and open press.
Yeah, they expected the media to be the watchdog, right? And it's been a very long time in our country since the media was actually an unbiased political watchdog. I would be in favor of that. I'm the kind of a guy, I believe you're the kind of a guy, we call balls and strikes. I mean, you just heard me criticizing conservatives and Republicans for being duplicitous on the issue of Mueller. I think that's the way our media is supposed to be. I think how healthy would that be for our republic if you could turn on the television and you could watch investigative reporters who are actually looking for the truth instead of pursuing an agenda. I think it's very damaging where we're at, but I'm hopeful because I think the media is evolving to a place where you're going to see more and more of it. More people want reality than this farce.
Well, let's hope so. Our great friend Mark Meckler joining us. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Mark with the Convention of States. The legislature is about ready to wind up here. We missed you and your usual annual visit to Idaho.
Yeah, I miss coming there. It's quite an exciting place for me. The John Birch Society is as wild and conspiratorial and crazy there as anywhere in the country. So it's kind of amusing to come there and listen to them as they come out of their caves and say a bunch of wild and crazy stuff. But we had to focus on the legislatures. We're going to get it done this year. They're losing the battle. They're going to lose the battle against convention of states. It's really sad because a lot of folks in the JBS, they hold themselves out as conservatives today. They stand with George Soros. I get accused of being funded by Soros. They actually repeat Soros talking points. I actually go into legislatures, and there are leftists, radical leftists all across the board are using talking points from the John Birch Society. I've actually seen them with printouts from the John Birch Society's webpage. So today, the John Birch Society, the leaders of the John Birch Society, in your state, who I know very well, by the way, and they're really nice people, but unfortunately they're supporting the radical left in America. So I miss the amusement of being there in Idaho, but we passed Arkansas, we passed Utah, we're going to pass Mississippi here in the next couple of days. North Carolina and South Carolina looking good. So we're going to get it done with or without Idaho and with or without the John Birch Society.
Mark Meckler joining us, Kevin Miller here, KIDO Talk Radio. What do you make of just the call for socialism that we've had from the young people? Bernie Sanders was a nut 4 years ago. Now he's mainstream.
Well, I'm concerned about it because I don't like the narrative, which is just another reason to move for a convention of states, because what we're looking for is the structural change. We're building a structural wall against socialism. You can't prevent people from talking and thinking about certain things, but you can put structures in place that prevent us from centralizing government and creating a socialist government. That's what the founders had in place initially. That's been largely destroyed, those protections, or a lot of them, by the Supreme Court, unfortunately. So we are the solution against the march of socialism. I would add, though, I'm not as concerned as some people. I meet with young people all over the country. I look at the polling, the crosstabs behind the polling. The vast majority of young people who say that they support socialism actually believe this, which is incredible. They think socialism leads to smaller government and lower taxes and a freer market. And so they are, philosophically, they're actually well aligned with you and I. They don't want government involved in their lives. They want more freedom. They want lower taxes. They've been told that that's socialism. So that's an education problem. We all know our university system's broken. We're going to have to work on that over the long haul.
Speaking of which, recently you wrote a piece in the Daily Caller, particularly to education and religious freedom, which seems to be an endangered species, not only in the public forum, but in educational schools today.
Yeah, there's a law that was passed in 1965 called ERSA, the Educational Services Act, and basically what it does is it allows the government to give money to schools to get tutors for kids, both just scholastic tutors, career tutors, guidance counselors, and that law had been interpreted in the 1960s to prohibit any religious organization from providing these services. Now, I'm not talking about providing pastoral services. I'm not talking about teaching on the Bible or anything like that. I'm talking about just a tutor who happens to come from a Christian organization couldn't tutor a kid in math in a private school, by the way, being paid by the government, or couldn't tutor a kid about his career or guide him in his career. It's outrageous. It was straight up religious bigotry. And what's awesome is that Betsy DeVos and the Department of Education just reinterpreted that, said that is straight up religious bigotry. It's not allowed in our government. And so now religious organizations who are often best suited, who have the personnel to do this, can provide this assistance. And I think it's another blow for religious liberty in America. This president, by the way, the greatest president in modern American history on religious liberty, I'm proud to say.
Indeed. Mark Meckler, finally, what is next? Do you see, of course, Ocasio-Cortez, she's mad her new Green Deal got slammed in the Senate. What else are the devious little libs up to, do you think?
Yeah, well, look, they've got an agenda that's pretty broad and pretty scary. You hear the talk about socialism. They're talking about doing away with the Electoral College, which is horrifyingly bad. That's the polling that concerned me the most. Rasmussen came out with a poll yesterday. 55% of people are for doing away with the Electoral College, which means that states like yours, you would be irrelevant. There's no president that would ever care about the state of Idaho. There's no reason for them to. There's no cities that are big enough where they could collect enough votes. And so they'd be in New York and Philly and San Francisco and Boston and Miami. All the big cities would dominate the election. So I think that's really scary, and that's something they intend to do. That would take a constitutional amendment. I think that's a stretch for them. But I'm scared that people support that. So that's one thing. They're also talking about packing the Supreme Court. This is being openly discussed by almost all of the Democratic candidates. What they mean by that is going from, say, 9 justices to 16 justices, so that if they get a Democratic president, they could nominate 5 or 6 or 8 more justices. That's a scary, scary thought. And so that's something that can be done, by the way, legislatively. Does not have to be done by constitutional amendment. So I think those are the things that the Democrats have coming down the pike. And I think our job is just to be mainstream Americans. Most Americans don't support that kind of stuff. We need to show how crazy the Democrats and the left is, and we just need to be regular people.
Mark Meckler, keep your powder dry and say hello to George Soros for me, would you?
You bet. Great to be with you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Mark Meckler joining us from the Convention of States. Your reaction next, plus the big story that's continuing to resonate. Jussie Smollett, if you're a big money liberal, if you're a big money movie star, you get a little different justice. People always talk about the two criminal justice systems in America. Here you have this guy who was a big star of Empire and talking about how Donald Trump was bad, and police say that he orchestrated this whole attack. They charged him with it. Then, in my opinion, a sweetheart deal by a prosecutor gets him off. He pays $10,000 and says he was innocent the whole time. The city of Chicago is upset. And our criminal justice system isn't built on race. It's built on money, right? And we talked a little bit about this a couple days ago. The criminal justice system is like getting on an airplane. If you have enough money for first class, well, you get the reclining seats, you get the hot towel, you get in first, out first, that sort of thing. You're comfortable. As the rest of us dregs just go on back. If you don't have the money, then you're in the back. You're in the middle seat. You don't get the aisle. You don't get the window seat. You don't pick your seat. You don't get room to breathe, right? So it doesn't matter if you're white, black, whatever. It matters if you have money. That's the case involving Mr. Smollett.
This is an unbelievable, not just whitewash of justice, this is a person now who's been let off scot-free with no sense of accountability of the moral and ethical wrong of his actions.
This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life. But I'm a man of faith, and I'm a man that has knowledge of my history, and I would not bring my family, our lives, or the movement through a fire like this. I just wouldn't.
We believe that it was the correct result in this case. We're very happy for this result, and we are very anxious for Jussie to get on with his career and his life and to move forward.
I've heard that they wanted their day in court with TV cameras so America could know the truth, but no, they chose to hide behind secrecy and broker a deal to circumvent the judicial system.
There is no accountability then in the system. It is wrong, full stop.
In other words, he paid 10 grand and he's out. And the Chicago prosecutors in one of the most corrupt cities in America had enough gall to say that justice, this would be the same justice that if you were homeless, that if you were broke, that if you had a public defender. By the way, the mayor of Chicago, liberal Rahm Emanuel, called this a whitewash of justice. The police are angry because this guy made it up, according to the police. And what did he get for it? A slap on the wrist. And then he has the chutzpah to say that he was free and he's going to be an advocate. And then you have the sycophants in Hollywood going, hey, man, run, Jesse, run. You're the best. My goodness gracious. Let's get your reaction next. Waking up on the right side, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. This just in, Republican tells Ocasio-Cortez that solution to climate change is to have more babies. Who would have thought taking your phone calls about the issues that matter to you at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Duncan joining us from Kuna, Idaho. Good morning, Duncan.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Hey, before I ask you the question I wanted to ask you, I just wanted to comment on Mark Meckler's accusations against the John Birch Society. Anybody who study or researches the John Birch Society knows that what he said wasn't true, and like all nefarious actors, he's just using projection. So the question I wanted to ask you, Kevin, was about 2 years ago, Robert Brown, who then worked for the John Birch Society, came to the state capitol and did a presentation to the legislatures concerning Article 5. And Patrick Henry said something that I think is very important around this. He said that, for my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and then to provide for it. So around this Article 5 topic, to cover the whole ground and the whole truth, would you be willing to set up a debate on air with Robert Brown and Mark Meckler? Because I know when Robert Brown was here 2 years ago, you said that you were against the Convention of the States when Robert Brown was on air. So just to clear all that up and to get the whole ground of the whole matter of truth out there, would you be willing to set that up with Robert Brown and Mark Meckler on air?
I was trying to set it up with Tom Munns and Mark Meckler. We can't seem to get Mark Meckler back to the state. I think it would be a town hall meeting worth having. Personally, I would be more than happy with that. By the way, coming up, we're going to hear from Tom Munns, who will give us the other side of the story. But I think it would be huge. That's why I asked Mark if he was coming back. And we had initial discussions with him on it last year. That fell through. But, yes, I would be more than happy to do it. I would like to do it where we could invite people and really pump it up, Duncan.
Sure, and that would be great. And I know your screener just told me that Mark Meckler was willing to debate anybody, anytime, anywhere.
He did say
but
that.
Just earlier this year, he told me directly that he would never debate Robert Brown or Sean Meehan, who you've also had on your show from Nevada before.
No, we would work on making that happen. Maybe the next time we have Mark on, and he's a once a month, once every 2 months kind of guy, we'll put him on the spot.
Yeah, that would be great if you would do that and let Idahoans cover the whole ground of the whole truth and let them discern by the spirit of truth.
Duncan, that works for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Have a great day, sir.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Traffic and weather together.
Doug 7's Eric Everett.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate it. Let's go to our man, Doug in Mountain Home, who's been very patient, calling back. Good morning, Doug.
Hi, Kevin. How are you? You got
Living the
way
dream.
too much on your plate this morning. I can't even keep up with it. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I sort of lost what I was going to get at. Anyway, so this John Birch Society, what are they all about?
Well, that's coming up next hour, but they're very conservative and been one of the foremost conservative groups and vilified groups in the country for many, many years. They've stood tall against communism and socialism and To some, they're heroes. To others, they're extremists. I love them. I think they do a great job, and I would never question the patriotism of those folks in the John Birch Society.
Okay. I've read a little, seen stuff about them, but the other thing, so on this initiative to get, let me turn that down, initiative to get these, on the
initiative for the initiative.
Yeah, exactly. And you think they're going to get that passed, get it done? I hope so.
Oh, yeah, they're going to shut it down.
Huh.
They're going to shut it down because the establishment wants it that way.
All right, I'm losing you. I'm way out here in the middle of these windmills going to work, so I'll let you go. Keep up the good work.
God bless. Thank you, Doug.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. More coming up. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin.
Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. To Chicago, and Jeff Manasso joining us now, Fox News Radio, with the latest on a story that everyone around the world is talking about. Jeff, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Kevin.
Where do we go from here when we're talking about Jussie Smollett?
Well, he's still facing a felony charge by the investigation by the FBI and the U.S. Postal Service for that alleged fake hate letter, that death threat letter that was sent to Empire Studios just prior to this alleged hate hoax that took place on the streets of Chicago in late January, for which 16 counts, felony counts, brought by a federal grand jury, have now been tossed out, and incredibly, the documents, the records, the evidence sealed by a judge. The Cook County Attorney's Office is behind this decision, and we know that the Cook County State's Attorney, her name is Kim Fox, and she recused herself from this decision, from the case. But it's alleged by Chicago police and other officials in Chicago that she's behind this decision. She recused herself from the case after the Fraternal Order of Police got wind that she tried to pressure the police department early on to have the feds take the case, to have the FBI take this case. And this after a revelation of text messages showing that Fox had tried to get not only get the FBI to take the case, but it followed her introduction to Smollett, a Smollett relative, via former First Lady Michelle Obama's chief of staff. And we've got the text messages from Fox to Smollett's relative saying, trying to figure out logistics. I'll keep you posted. The response was, OMG, this would be a huge victory for Jussie. I don't know about you, Kevin, but nowhere have we seen a state's prosecutor, a federal prosecutor in a case like this, in communication with the alleged suspects' family members, trying to make it easier for him. So I think all eyes are going to now shift toward her. We saw Eddie Johnson, the police superintendent, incensed by this. The mayor incensed by this. I mean, everybody's kind of on the same page, the Fraternal Order of Police and my CPD contacts, saying that the evidence against Jussie Smollett was so overwhelming that not only did a federal grand jury of his peers, immediately hand down 16 felony counts against him, but there was so much evidence against him that we only know half, according to my contact. Will we ever know it? All of it? No, it's been sealed now. And it's just, jaws on the floor are not adequate enough to describe the way the media is feeling, the way police are feeling. Like, what happened here? It's a great story, and it's not over by a long shot. And I think if anybody can dig and anybody can kind of get to the bottom of what happened and who made the decision and who's pulling the strings here, the story's going to continue.
Boy, this is more like fiction than fact, but it is fact.
Well, yeah, it is, and we've heard from the mayor saying that this is a whitewash of justice. The police superintendent saying the city is still owed an apology. But then you hear from Smollett and his spokespeople saying that this is a son, a brother, an innocent man whose name and character have been unjustly smeared. He's not going to apologize for anything. He wants to get back to work. He needs the money. And where his career goes from here, I'm not sure. But we know that the Empire show has tanked since this happened. We can tell you that the folks at Fox Entertainment are still standing by him. And so we'll see what happens. But
sure,
he still does face some possible jail time over that alleged hate hoax letter that was sent, that CPD says he sent. But just the fallout, I think this one, it seems like everybody's kind of on the same page in terms of their reaction to this, and with evidence that's so overwhelming, it's kind of hard to get past the decision to just drop a case like this just because he's going to forfeit $10,000 as his bond, and because he spent a couple of hours over at Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition doing quote unquote community service. So this story is still going to develop, and it's going to be interesting to watch.
And you'll be there, Jeff Manasso. We appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Max in Garden City with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin Miller. What was the name of that fella who was really slamming the John Birch Society?
Mark Meckler.
Mr. Meckler. He didn't meet the Birchers that I met. I just got back from a lecture tour, and I had the opportunity, I'll say the privilege, to speak before members of the John Birch Society. And they strike me as a very, very pro-Constitution, very patriotic group of people. We all stood arm in arm singing God Bless America. We discussed elements of the Constitution. After the lecture was over, we just had a nice dinner, and we talked about a lot of things. I don't know which John Birch Society Mr. Meckler bumped into, but it's not the one that I met with. I came away feeling really impressed and with a little more hope for the future, because there were people like the John Birch Society looking out for the Ocasio-Cortezes of this world, keeping an eye open so that we don't get completely co-opted. My opinion, my view, I only spent a few hours with them, but that's what I came away with.
Max, thank you for the call.
All right, buddy.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Tess. Tess, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Oh, hi. Hey, so, boy, I woke up early this morning, and I happened to catch you talking about the initiative issue. And, I used to be an initiative person. I've done initiatives, referendums, recalls, just about anything you can name. And I really have to tell you that that was in my past life, and I am glad to see them finally coming forward to limit initiative and how it's collected, because those initiatives are not constitutional. They were started back in the late early 1900s. And the thing is, we have a representative government. As your representative said, we elect people who make those decisions for us. You don't allow an uninformed population, and I'm not being mean, but it's people just live their lives. They don't know. And so an example of that is, when you had the Prop 1 come up for horse racing, well, who ran the ads against that? Well, the big casino owners. That's who. Indian Gaming from the western states. They're the ones that ran those ads because they don't want competition.
Sure.
Who ran the ads for Prop 2 on Medicaid? Medicaid is 37 states did that. That wasn't just to Idaho. So think about it. Idaho already has a work requirement. Now why are they asking not to have a work requirement? Same thing with Constitutional Convention. I'll let your guest expand on that. But these are dangerous. They're really dangerous, and they undermine. Just like Marcy's Law, this is not Idaho. This is countrywide where they want to do that. The Constitution protects things like due process. If you pass Marcy's Law, you lose your due process.
Well, we don't have to worry about that, Tess. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Sean Meehan joining us from Nevada. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. How have you been, sir?
Great to talk to you, sir. What can we do for you?
Well, Just wanted to respond to a couple comments Mr. Meckler made. And unfortunately, if it was for taking the Convention of States issue out of it, Mr. Meckler and I would probably agree on many things. But I wanted to share a comment that he made there saying that they're funded by 80,000 small donors. I'd like to encourage people to go to the Convention of States Facebook page, where about a month ago on his battle cry, Mr. Meckler himself, via video, said that they approached Rush Limbaugh for an endorsement. They said they had a donor with $2.25 million set aside for it. Rush Limbaugh ultimately said he wasn't interested, but they talked about it. So that would contradict that they're wholly funded by 80,000 small donors. I could also provide the documentation that they have been funded by the Koch brothers in the past. Soros, I don't know who's making that accusation, but Meckler does not work with Soros. He's not funded by Soros, and so that's a stupid, unfair accusation. But I'd also like to say that I'm happy anytime he wants to debate me on the issue. I'd be happy whether you facilitated it down here in Nevada, I'll come up to Boise, whatever anybody wants, because in November 16th, he was in Boise at your library, and he said publicly that Robert Brown and myself go around the country lying about the Convention of States. So if he wants to back that up, I'm happy to debate him, and he can show his facts to people that I lie. So I'm receptive to that. And I want to thank you for what you do, Kevin. Love your show. You stir up a lot of great conversation, and I appreciate the people of Idaho being so engaged in the issue.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for what you do, and hopefully we can make that happen.
Have a good day, sir.
You too. All right, Sean Meehan joining us from Nevada. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Do want to remind everybody, Tom Munn's coming up. So, Tara and Holly, if you can wait, we will take your calls concerning the John Birch Society versus the Convention of States versus Liberty. But joining us now, veteran, representative, mom, wife, best-selling author, I still don't do her justice, Representative Priscilla Giddings joining us once again. Good morning, ma'am.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for fitting me in here for a minute just to give you an update on the excitement in the legislature.
Well, your testimony is getting a lot of attention. We had a young man who actually taped everything and sent me your stuff, and you were definitely top of mind today concerning the initiative bill. Your thoughts on what you testified about and your concerns about this bill?
Sure. So just kind of a quick overview. 1159 is making a initiative almost impossible for Idahoans now. It's in the Constitution that political power rests on the people, and that the people have the right to propose initiatives. But now they're making it where you have to get a huge percentage of people. You have to get 91% of the legislative district's input. And then it's also created a double standard that on the initiative you have to use the Legislative Division of Financial Management to provide a fiscal impact statement, which ironically is a double standard because legislators don't even have to use that. So it's really it's kind of going against the Constitution, but it's a very hot topic. There's Republicans and Democrats kind of on both sides. It passed the state Senate by one vote, and we're going to vote on it in the House today, but it's kind of looking like it's going to fly through the House. And so the people are upset. It's taking power away from the people. And so I think everyone's kind of trying to encourage the governor to potentially veto it.
All right, Representative Giddings, don't smack me too hard on this one, but in reality, when's the last time we really had a grassroots initiative make its way to the ballot? Isn't it those with the big pockets get the big money initiatives?
You know, for the most part, but actually we have had a few citizens push some grassroots initiatives. I'd have to look at the numbers to see how far they've gone and which ones have actually made it to the ballot. But yeah, I would say there is a lot of money involved in the current process. But what this change does is it makes it only impossible for millions of dollars to push an initiative. So this bill isn't really helping that. It's making it worse.
Well, then you have Senator Gross saying he doesn't want us to become Oregon or California. And you take a look at, whether it was horse racing, whether it was Prop 2, These are progressive bills, are they not? That and possibly medical marijuana next year.
Yeah, potentially, and I think that's what they're trying to attack is the future initiative of the medical marijuana. And whether or not you agree with those things or not, trying to get back to the principle of the matter, this bill is essentially giving the legislature more power and the people less power. If I don't think comparing to California or Oregon is a fair assessment because their initiative laws are completely different. In California, you only get they only get 6 months, and that's what this law is reducing us down to 6 months. So it's kind of the same difference. We're making it the same as California, but also the California legislature does not have the ability to overturn initiatives like we do in Idaho. You know, it was, a few years ago that the people in Idaho put the initiative on the ballot for term limits. And then the legislature met for session, and they just overturned it that quickly. So really, there's no reason, in my opinion, to be, quote unquote, afraid of initiatives in Idaho. The legislature can overturn them if they're not good or if they don't want them. So there again, I don't quite understand why we're trying to, take away power from the people.
Well, they certainly didn't do that with Medicaid expansion, did they?
No, and they'd had that opportunity, and so it's kind of ironic that they're calling this a retribution bill, kind of against the people for voting for Medicaid expansion. Well, there was opportunity in the legislature to overturn it, but they chose not to. So I don't think it's fair to blame the people again.
Representative Priscilla Gillings joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So looks like this bill will pass. Looks like, much to my chagrin, hemp is going to pass. Yet, and we don't want to get you in too much trouble, but it is talk radio, so we have to have some controversy this morning. The grocery tax bill, due to your efforts, you and maybe a couple others were the only ones that said, hey, let's keep our promise about repealing the grocery tax.
And we sure tried, Kevin. We submitted legislation, and we have chairmen who have the authority in the process who just say, hey, we're not going to let this legislation go forward. And it's very frustrating because the people want it, we're trying, and it's almost, they're just keeping the legislative process from working. There again, a reason why I don't think we should be giving the legislature more power. How are those people supposed to weigh in if the legislature is not going to let the process work?
Very good point. Finally, Medicaid expansion, how do you see it playing out? Will there be a limit? I know there's big controversy over work requirements. I believe the Senate's still debating this. You guys don't get to go home until you come up with some type of bill that the governor will sign.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're still debating the work requirements. I'm imagining, I think it's this morning, the Senate committee is going to have a hearing on those work requirements, and we'll see if they're going to pass through the Senate or not. And then up next will be the budget for Medicaid expansion. And we should be voting on that probably early next week, if not by Friday.
Any good news?
I guess it all depends on what you think, but we did kill one bill by one vote yesterday that would have kind of limited sportsmen being able to shoot specific targets that maybe have a substance inside out on public land. So that would have limited our sportsmen, and I don't think that would have been too good. So it was nice that we killed that. So that could be a good way to end with good news.
Well, Representative Giddings, we appreciate your service, both as a veteran, as an active member, as a pilot, as a representative. We thank you for joining us here this morning on such short notice.
Thanks, Kevin, for hearing out my opinion.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good morning, Dave.